Hello, welcome back to the podcast. In today's episode, I have a very special guest, Mayra, and I'm going to let her introduce herself. So, mujer, listen up because I know she is going to inspire you to go after your dream goals.
Hola, Lucy. Muchas gracias. Thank you for having me on your podcast today. My name is Mayra Gomez Sanchez, and I'm a launch and sales copywriter and marketing strategist for the BIPOC community.
I want to start these conversations with questions that we ask every guest that comes to the podcast because one of our goals is to really normalize money conversations among Latinas. And so tell us, what was your relationship with money growing up?
Yeah, so growing up, I grew up in a traditional Mexican household. Mis papás, mi hermanita, and we just lived a very, I would call it normal life where we went to school. My parents have and still have their traditional jobs. My mom is an attendance clerk at a high school. My dad is a custodian. And I feel like the money talk at home was always just, just keep it safe. Do when you have it, use it for your necessities. And if there's anything extra, put it into savings porque uno nunca sabe, so you never know what could happen with your money. So it was always just like the overall theme of keeping it safe. So I grew up making sure that whenever I did have money, it went towards like my bills. Did I have food for the month? And anything extra, I would put it away. And I really wouldn't buy anything for myself because I would feel guilty if I did. So that was really the theme for it.
Thank you for sharing that. And you are what I call a super saver, which means that you grew up being told that the financial safety came from you having the money put away, right? And you also
Mm-hmm.
brought something up that is so traditional in our cultura, which is guarda por si algo pasa, right? Like just save in
Mm-hmm.
case something happens. And although it is very true that we need to have our fully funded peace of mind, not everything needs to be put away, but por si algo pasa, because we have so much control of our finances, of our future, of our purpose. And so I appreciate you sharing that because it's very common, by the way. You're not the only one that has shared these, but everyone that comes to the podcast definitely brings a different perspective. Now, Mayra, tell us, how did you ended up launching your business? Because I see you now having your own copywriting business. I see you wanting to really embody entrepreneurship because I believe that you are the first one in your family to take on that step. And so let me come back. The first question is, when did you decide that it was time for you to become an entrepreneur? And then the second question is, why copywriting?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Lucy. So I was a teacher for 8 years of my life. I taught kinder through second grade. That ranged mostly first grade, and I loved it for so long. But it got to the point where I was starting to feel burnt out from the profession, and I felt a lot of guilt around that because I went to school for it. I put a lot of money into my loans to be a teacher, and I thought like if I decided to go on this path, this is a path I need to take until I retire and, pass. But so all of those thoughts made me feel like I can't move forward to something else. Like this is my path. But by the time it was maybe the pandemic, obviously, and how so many people's lives were changed in that time of our lives, I definitely felt it where in terms of my mental health, where I started feeling like foggy brained. Like I feel like I wasn't really present with the people that I loved. And I knew that that wasn't normal. And it had a lot to do with my job. So that's when I just started perusing the internet, like out of curiosity, what else could I do outside of teaching? Or like, what did teachers go into? Just, good old Google search. And then a lot that kept popping up was the pattern of copywriting. And at first, I didn't even know what that was. Like, even to this day, when I meet people, they're like, what do you do? And I'm like, I'm a copywriter. A lot of the responses are like, what is that? Which I get, right? It's like, once you explain it, then you're like, oh yeah, I know what that is. But the term I still feel like is fresh for a lot of people. So when I was the same way, I was like, well, what's a copywriter? And I started seeing like, oh, you're helping people take a certain action through words. It could be like on a website, it could be on emails. Um, and when I read that at first, I was like, oh, I see that. But my first thought was like, oh, like in a bad way. Like I've seen those type of emails and like they're salesy and kind of gives me that gross feeling. So I'm like, well, I don't want to be part of that. But then as I started going into a deeper rabbit hole on copywriting, I saw there was another light to that side of marketing where it doesn't have to be that way. You know, you could be writing to have someone take an action, but for good. And then I started seeing subscribing to people who I value their work, like yourself, start seeing emails that come in like yourself, where I'm like, this is all filled with value. These people want to help others genuinely. I'm like, that's the people I want to write for. So once I started seeing that side of marketing, I'm like, well, that's the part I want to be on. And then, so I'm like, okay, I can be a copywriter for good. And then once I started taking a copywriting courses, learning like the strategy behind it, that's when I built my website, got my LLC, and started doing it part-time along with teaching. And it wasn't until late last year where I finally took the plunge and fully went into copywriting because I felt like I had enough skill under my belt to be able to go into that specifically. And not just that, but I knew wholeheartedly that I wanted to serve the BIPOC community because I saw the difference in how they were showing up online. They were like being authentic, they were being real, they were sharing stories about their experiences growing up, where even if it wasn't exactly like mine, you know, because whose is, it was all, there was a similar pattern. And it didn't just have to be Latinos, like the Black community, the Asian American community. Um, Everyone had something similar where they were just trying to make their lives better for themselves and for others, whether it be through their products or their services. And that just brought that extra push to my want to write copy. Where it's like, well, now I don't just want to write copy, I want to write it for the BIPOC community. So that took off, and my clients have been all BIPOC business owners, product based, service based. And it's been just really fun, you know, like hearing their stories, hearing their passions come out when we're on our Zoom calls. It makes the
Love
journey
that.
so fun. And when I deliver that copy to them, I feel good. I was like, I feel like I was part of their story. They were part of mine. And it's like continuing with this ripple effect because now those words are out to the world. Their audience is taking it in. They're feeling good in one way or another. And it's creating this ripple effect. So that's why I've been really enjoying my journey.
I love that so much. And I, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that you have become a copywriter or work on a special project for Nopalera. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so I'm
They
not
were one of
wrong.
my first clients.
I love that. So I'm an angel investor of Nopalera. And
Oh my
I
goodness.
when I saw that you have written blogs for them, it just gave me like extra goosebumps because that's what this is one of the reasons why I want to become wealthy, okay? Wealthier beyond
Yes.
millions now. It's because when we use our money to help other Latinas, whether through businesses or hiring them as a copywriter, we are creating this financial ecosystem where everyone gets a piece of the pie and everyone
Mm-hmm.
gets to build generational wealth. And so when I saw your name, this was after I invested in Novalera. I was like, oh, like this is like fascinating to me. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you for the work that you're doing. Now, there's a couple of things you mentioned that I want to kind of circle back to. One is sales. I am a former sales professional. Like I work in hospitality and sales. There was a time in my career where I was the director of sales. And the way we were taught to sell or invite people to come in and work for us didn't feel right with me. So I started
Mm-hmm.
to use a lot of storytelling to bring people, which is something that you just mentioned as a copywriter, right? Like knowing the difference between ethical sales and story selling is completely different. Now, What are some of the things that you do as a copywriter that really help expand company brand, right? For example, let's bring back Nopalera. You work with them. How were you able to really expand their mission through your writing, which was a skill that you already had in your 9 to 5? I think that you went back to get like the copywriting side of it just because you wanted to make sure that you were doing it right. But I'm almost sure that you already had the skill.
Oh yeah, I know. I love that you brought that up because I am complete agreement with you. I, when I look back at teaching now, I don't see it as like, oh, like I wasted my time because I really didn't. I learned so much being an educator, and I'm still educating, just in a different light. And one big takeaway I got from teaching that I am implementing from day one in copy is my active listening. So I had to do a lot of that with parents, with the kids. And I think that has been like the change, that first change, and really making positive impact with the clients. Because when we get on our calls, even if it's just the exploration call and they're telling me their goals, I'm deeply listening to every word they're saying. And then I respond back to them to make sure that we're on the same page. Like, so I would, for example, I could say, like, oh, I heard XYZ from you. I'm like, is that correct? And then they could tell me yes or no. For the most part, it's yes, but it helps to know that we're on the same page. And then, if we move forward and we get into our onboarding call, at that point, we go deep into like their brand voice style guide. So they'll tell me who their target audience is, their voice that they're using, words to avoid, maybe emojis to avoid, and then the opposite, like these are the words we want, like keywords. These are the emojis we want, and then all of that I take so that when I go into my market research on my own end, I'm able to not just use that as my foundation, but I'm also using what they told me in the exploration call and the onboarding call, because I like using Fathom AI where it records our conversation, and I not only hear it, but I read the transcript. So I can actually take words they said in that transcript when they're very passionate. And I'm like, that's the key right there. I can like take it and add it to my Google Doc of notes. And so that along with like, I'll go on, now that I know their target audience, I'll go on different platforms like Reddit or YouTube or Instagram, Facebook, any comments that are out there in relation to their goals, I'll copy paste it into my Google Doc. And then I'll also start creating like columns of patterns that I'm seeing. And I'll start bolding those patterns until I come up with a theme for them, for their work. And I'm like, okay, now that I have the juice, now I have everything I need to write the copy. So all of that has led to like the positive outcome in my copy journey, where when I deliver the work to them, it's not just like, oh, I just kind of winged it. It's like, no, there was so much backstory that went with it. And it's presented in a Google Doc. I have comments on the side where I explain some strategies. And then on top of that, I have a Loom video where I'm walking them through it in real time, just because going back to teaching, I'm thinking, well, what are the different ways people like to consume learning material? Some like it to read it, some like to hear it, some like both. So I have it for all types of learners. I don't know, the person on the other end prefers just to read it, or the person on the other end needs to hear it. So that's why I feel like the way I deliver their work to them has helped them and be like, oh, okay, like I totally see her thought process. I see why she did X, Y, Z. And I'm not left wondering. I know exactly what went behind the scenes with my copy that was given to me.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And I have worked with copywriters myself through Say Hola Wealth. And I love when they can read my brain because they have done the work that you're talking about. When I say this is my goal for these sales page, for these blog, for these social media assets, and they literally read my brain. I love that. So
Yes.
I love working with copywriters very, very much, especially Latinas. Now, Mayra, how did you find your first client? Because a lot of people want to, jump into entrepreneurship, but finding the one first client to make that one sale can be tricky. So how did you find your first client?
That is a super great question. I think what helped was knowing who I wanted to target. So once I knew like, okay, not only do I want to be a copywriter, but I want to copyright for the BIPOC community, I knew that when I reached out to people, they were going to be my ideal client, a BIPOC business owner. So when I was doing my research, I started creating like a list on a spreadsheet of people I wanted to reach out to, um, given that fact. And then I would also put notes in there, like things that I knew about that person or great things that they've done recently, just so that I have a genuine conversation to start with them. Um, and then that helped me get into like, okay, now that I have all this down on a spreadsheet, now I can start contacting them. So when I would reach out on email, because now I'm doing a variety of outreach where it's also like LinkedIn and Instagram. But in the beginning, it was solely email. So I made sure that my subject line was engaging. So again, putting my copywriting hat on, I'm like, well, I'm going to put their name in the email because people love hearing their name. I'm going to say thank you because of XYZ, because I genuinely like whatever they're doing for their business. And I feel like that was the first step in like getting my email opened. So for example, it could be along the lines like, hey Lucy, I love say Hola Wealth. And then, they open the email and then I introduce a brief introduction of myself, a brief thing that I liked about them, and then just wondering if they needed support on copy services for their business. And regardless, I always end it either way, happy to connect. Because while I do want to, help my business out and help their business out, I also genuinely want to connect with them, even if we don't end up working together, just because I want to build my community of people that I admire. So I think that type of format has really helped in terms of people seeing like, okay, I get it. She's a business owner, but she's also not just like, hunting me down. She wants to
Yeah.
get to know me. And so I think that helped with getting responses. So my first response was actually from Ana Flores of We All Grow Latina. And it was so great to hear from her because I was like starstruck at first, like, oh my gosh, the CEO wrote back to me. And she was so genuine and so kind. And she wanted to get on a call with me. So we got on a Zoom call and we talked about her current goals at the time. And that allowed me to get my first project in of writing the Amigahood landing page. So that was the very first project I ever did. And I love that it was because she is like my target audience. And I know there's like a whole network of Latinas under We All Grow Latina. So I just felt like that has opened a lot of doors for me and for others.
Love that. I love hearing you talk, and copy is selling. Like I think that's one of the things that, you know, most Latinas who want to launch a business don't understand, because we don't have a healthy relationship with sales. I mean, I do,
Mhm.
but most Latinas don't, right? They're like, oh my God, I don't want to be too salesy. White men are aggressive with sales, so therefore I have to be the same way. And what they don't understand is that our story and our true connection to want to help and serve is also another form of sales. So as you were walking us through your email, the whole time I'm thinking she's selling her services. Maybe other people think that you have to do, hey, my name is Mayra and I'm with blah, 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 right? But that's like, we don't do sales that way. It's storytelling and connection. It's really helpful for creating consistent sales in your business. And I love how you said how you were genuine about the things that you like, because that's what has brought me endless clients. Okay. When I'm honest and
Mhm.
I say, I want to help you, this is what I'm going to do. And I do tell my clients, like, I'm not going to let you play small. It might not be always happy and butterflies. You might be a little bit uncomfortable, but at the
Mhm.
end of the day, I'm going to help you get results. So I appreciate that so much. The story of Will Grow, I think Will Grow has opened up doors for so many of us, which I love. Now, how did you feel when you earned your first paycheck from the skills that you already have? Meaning, it didn't have the school name that you used to work for. Like, it was your money. You created the money. Walk us through, how did you feel looking at that check?
Oh my goodness. I felt like in disbelief, like I did this, like I brought this in by myself. And it was it was an exciting feeling. Like I felt proud of myself. And I was like, wow, if I do this once and it felt good, like I didn't feel sleazy about doing this. And the person on the other end was also very happy. You know, we both win. I can't wait to continue doing this to to help my business because, you know, I need to pay my bills, but to help their businesses keep growing too, because they have a passion for what they're doing, you know, for whatever reason. So I just felt very happy, excited, and proud.
I love that. Now, sometimes entrepreneurship can be a little bit rocky as we're learning, especially when we are the first ones in our family to navigate this new landscape of entrepreneurship. What what were some of the mistakes that you've made along the way that maybe in the moment didn't feel right, but now you're like, it happens.
Yes. Oh my gosh, still making them to this day, but I have come to continue working on my mindset that it's okay because I'm learning from it. I'm not if something happens that is not according to the quote unquote plan, it doesn't mean that's the end all be all. It's like, okay, well, that didn't go as planned. What can I do differently next time? So that has really helped me just, you know, keep moving up in my entrepreneur journey. And some challenges that have come up that I feel like I am getting better at is just even marketing myself. So it's like ironic because like I help others be more visible, but I can't seem to help myself be more visible. And I think it goes to that mindset thing where it's like, oh, I'm not talking about others anymore. I'm talking about me. So helping myself say like, hey, I am capable. I do have the skills. Now, how do I showcase that on LinkedIn, on Instagram? So that mindset change has really helped me just improve in that where I do see myself as worthy in helping others, where in the past I didn't feel it. And now that I'm training myself that I am of worth to help others, I feel like it's shown in how I present myself online.
Yes, and I've seen you. I've been watching you, and I can see that you are welcoming more visibility, which is something that I also want to talk about on this episode. Like when you first launched your business, it's hard. It's hard to just be like, okay, me voy a poner enfrente de la cámara. I'm gonna dance. I'm gonna make a reel. I'm gonna look so confident, right? Because as your business evolves, so does your confidence. I remember
Mm-hmm.
the first time I went live on Instagram, like my shoulders were up to my ears. Like I was literally terrified to talk. And normally I mumble when I speak. That's just part of who I am. But looking back at the video, like I'm mumbling all the time. I'm talking like this, like I'm not even opening my mouth because I was so terrified of being invisible. And one of the things that I learned is that visibility does not equal be on camera. You can be visible
Mm-hmm.
through your writing, especially if you are someone who loves the written word. Like that's your way of becoming visible. Use the
Mm-hmm.
storytelling to connect with people. And the other thing that I've learned too is that you don't have to be visible. Like you don't have to physically be on camera talking to people unless you love it. Like I love it. I love it
Mm-hmm.
now. Um, but I also we have the skill set is just making sure that we welcome that because one of the mistakes that I see is that as we're launching businesses, sometimes we think that we need to let go of our identity or our roots to create consistent sales. And that has not served me, like being authentic, being who I am, mumbling, stuttering, cussing. Sometimes I also talk about God because I can be both, right? And that authenticity is really what connects with people like you and everyone else that listens to the podcast. Now, let's talk about your business name. Why did you decide to use a business name rather than your name?
Oh my gosh, that's a whole story too. When I first started my copy business, I was just focused on just getting started. I'm like, I may not know everything that comes with business, seeing that I'm the first one in my family, but I just had to start and then, you know, make tweaks along the way. So I'm like, well, I'm just gonna put my name first, Mayra G. Sanchez, and go from there. And then once I started getting more comfortable, like you said, with my visibility online, with really knowing my deeper why in serving the BIPOC community, that's when I'm like, well, I want to change it from my name to cultural visionaries, because I have noticed a pattern with the clients I've had that they're all visionaries. They all have this goal to make someone's life better through their product, through their service, and they're just very genuine about how they go about it. And they're all of the BIPOC community, so they're showcasing their culture as they're selling their products or services. So that's why I'm like, oh well, let's put those two keywords together: cultural, because my clients are of different cultures and they're very proud of those cultures, and then visionaries, because they have goals that they want to accomplish for themselves and for the communities that they serve. So that's why I'm like, this feels like the perfect name. And thankfully, um, I'm, like I said, learning about mistakes and all of that. Going quickly back to that question, I
Love
didn't
that.
know about trademarking. I was like, oh, trademarking, what is that? And luckily, with connections on Instagram, I thankfully came across Legal Amiga. Actually, I think I heard of her from you. So that's why I'm like, oh, okay, well, let me learn about that. And then she's helping me with my trademarking for cultural visionaries. So I just love how, like you said, there's this world of connections and we're all just helping each other out.
Yes. And, our business does create jobs for other people. And I think that's one of the things that I love about entrepreneurship, that we're not building just a business for us, right? Like, I'm not building Say Hola Well just so I can become the first millionaire in my family. I'm building Say Hola Well because I want to create job for Latinas, because I need to hire a copywriter. I need to hire a lawyer, which Liga Amiga is one of our lawyers. So we need to do really change the identity and have the vision for something bigger than just a side hustle. Because that's the thing that I see a lot of people do. Is like, oh, voy a ver si pega, and then I'll see, and it's like, no, you have to step into taking ownership from your business from day one, even if you don't know what the name is gonna be. Just use your name like you did. Like, just use your name. I wish I knew that. Just use your name and then change it along the way. But as we evolve as entrepreneurs, our business is going to do the same. So I love that you share that. Now, let's talk about pricing, okay? Because a lot of people are like, pricing? That mean, what do
I
you
know.
mean? You mean that I have to charge for my services? What are some of the mindset, quote unquote, hiccups you had when it came to pricing your services?
Yes, that one has, even to this day, sometimes still feels like a tough one, where, especially at the beginning, I felt like, how can I charge these prices? Like, you get that imposter syndrome where, like, yes, you have all the skills, but when it comes down to that moment, you, or I at least am like, was like, oh my gosh, I don't know anything. And it just, these downward spiral of thoughts start coming down where I just felt like I shouldn't charge these prices. But I think what helped a lot is community, right? And along with building a community of the BIPOC, with the BIPOC business owners, I've also built a community with other copywriters. And in my copywriting community, that's a big topic that we're always talking about, is how to price our services. And it's helped to talk to them because um, they obviously went through the same program that I did, and we were all able to gain even more skills than what we started with. And we have now, portfolio to showcase for that, where even when their doubts does start to creep in, there is that support where they're like, they tell you, they just remind you. They remind you like, hey, XYZ. You have those skills. You need to charge for those skills, because it's not just about like writing pretty words and putting it out there, but there's so much strategy that goes behind it, research, time, that isn't seen. People just see the pretty words, but there's so much that goes behind it, that is why, you know, it is okay to charge, in the 1,000 plus, because you know what is going on behind the scenes, at least. And I'm speaking for myself in copywriting, but I'm sure that goes for many other different businesses. that have services or products.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you for sharing that mindset around pricing because this is something that I personally struggled with when I started. Now I help entrepreneurs with making sure that they're earning accordingly because I want them to use their business as part of their wealth building portfolio. And when they are charging for their skill set, they're able to really start having more money for their solo 401k, for their SEP IRA, any investment that they open through their business, and then just that energy of earning just completely changes. So thank you for that. Now, this podcast is all about opening doors for other mujeres. So I would love for you to share how can people work with you and where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on a variety of platforms. My website, it's still under MyraGSanchezAgency.com. I'm still trying to figure out, the tech behind that, but that is for the website. Instagram is cultural underscore visionaries underscore. For TikTok, it's cultural visionaries. I'm not really on that platform too much, but it's there. And my LinkedIn is Mayra Gomez Sanchez. So I mostly hang out on Instagram and LinkedIn, and I do have my website there where people could get to know more about me and my services.
Love it. Thank you, Mayra, for coming to the podcast. It has been amazing talking to you about your journey to entrepreneurship. And I'm sure that this will not be the last time we talk. I love what you're doing and just keep shining, keep showing, and keep going after those sales because you deserve to build a business that is going to help you create generational wealth.
Thank you so much, Lucy. That means a lot. I don't know, I just feel so inspired talking to you and how our community continues to uplift each other. So that's what we need to keep doing, continuing to uplift one another.
Absolutely.